Hi, everyone. Ooh, loud. Welcome. My name's Bryn Dirk, and I'm Director of Programming here at Bookstore1. Thank you for being here on Super Bowl Sunday, starting it off with some poetry. Pretty novel. I know most of you have been here before, but in case you haven't, I'll just give you a quick rundown of our PoetryMic series, which is that every month, on a Sunday of every month, we invite some of our favorite poets up here to give a reading. And sometimes we'll have people visiting and we'll have a guest poet, but this time around, as you can tell by the full house, we have 3 of our favorite local poets here with us. So I'm going to introduce each of them at the top, and after they've each finished reading, then the next will go, and then they will join each other up front and can take any questions that you might have. So I'm going to start with our 3rd poet first. He is also an entrepreneur. His newest book is Chappaquiddick Poems, a poetry visit to that sometimes separate island. He is the author of 2 previous books of poetry, Fragments in a Glass Bowl and Tug at the Knot. In the tech world, he has been a founder and executive in 5 companies in the Boston area. He lives and writes in Chappaquiddick and in Sarasota, Florida. Of course, I'm talking about our friend Don McLagan, so let's give him a round of applause first. Our second poet is an artist and retired psychotherapist. She is the author of 2 beautiful books of poetry and paintings, The Heart of the Family and Salami. And she has just published a children's book, The What Ifs, A Bedtime Story. She lives in Boston and, you guessed it, Sarasota. So let's welcome Liz Kelner. And now, starting us off today is a poet whose work has appeared widely in literary journals in North America and abroad. In 2020, he began investing time in an editorial board in the US, seeking to identify and publish promising new poets from around the world. He is a graduate of the Ohio University Creative Writing Program, where he earned bachelor's and master's degrees. Later, he accepted faculty and administrative positions at Ohio University, at the Columbus College of Art and Design, and at St. Louis University. He's a winner of the Mercantile Literary Prize for Fiction. Most recently, he authored 3 full-length collections of poetry, each of which earned their own praise from readers, fellow poets, editors, and reviewers. So let's welcome Michael Maul up to the podium. It's a maze. Let's keep the applause going. We'll give one more round of applause.
Well, I've done a lot. I made it up here and I backed up. So that's pretty good. First, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it so much. This event was never classified as the Super Bowl of poetry reading, which is good, because we're putting that on the front of everything now. So I'm glad you're here for the poetry. Hemingway, as you know, advised to write about what you know, and I've tried to be true to that all the time I've been writing, which is 60 years. I was 17 when I started, and I realized that even after 17, my voice is still changing.
Michael, can you put the mic up to your mouth a little bit more?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, good. But I'm a Florida poet, and I have done some publishing of my poems in Dublin, Ireland, which I like, and also I have 2 collections of poems and 1 chapbook. And Georgia is a wonderful person to put these on every Sunday, don't you think? It's just phenomenal, and she's really special that way. So I have 7 poems, perhaps. We'll see how the time goes. This poem is part of the first one. It's an ekphrastic poem, and I wanted to do this because I'd never seen a person read a poem that's based and inspired by a piece of art. But this is what was done in oils originally, and Susan Covert, who is the artist, is a local woman that lives in Bradenton also. And the title of this is A Little Place in the Sun. And here's my contribution to it. I live in a toaster on the edge of the sea, remote and hot, impossibly. I made the first move to come to the Gulf, but now the storms break out and they find me with wild waves pounding loud on my door. When I'm outside, in my yard, I am heat purified and oversee the needs of a stand of orphaned trees, a failing fence, and an aging me. Curious strangers once showed up at my gate, but I did not admit them in, for I have become too deeply baked, crusty brown, and pencil thin. As days end, the sun always dives into darkening western waters, while tired beams gather a little light that remains for a final modest flare. Each day, new suns arise to redirect my eyes on little edges of the earth I own, reminding me what's still here to revere and so much left to love. Thank you. So not only do I write poems about art, I pretty much write poems for anything about anything. So this is a poem I wrote to my barista. It's called Latte Maria. No one can begin my days any better than this. Receiving a cardboard cup from her hot hands every morning for a year. She does not know I lift the lid just to watch her caramel heart melt apart, then pop it into me. Thank you. I've pretty much been around dogs all my life, owned them, buried them, owned them, and this is about one of my dog poems that I brought. So I do write poems for dogs too. We were fresh, it's called, by the way, Allie in the Wildflowers, and Allie is a Great Pyrenees mountain dog, fearless, gentle, a herding dog. Do you know what they look like? Have you all seen this? Okay. So Allie in the Wildflowers. We were off the leash and in the forest. The first thing I thought is that she will never leave this unbounding joy. How could she? Here where she was born to be, among running streams, favored flowers, ancient trees. But when it was time to go, in darkening dusk, she left the chilling daffodils. And I told the coming stars, in my life, no greater love has ever chosen me. Can I do 2 dog poems? Not everybody likes dogs, I'm just saying. This poem was just recently published and was accepted on Christmas Day with an email. So I thought, well, that's a good present. It was published by Rue Scribe, which is set up in California. And Rue Scribe is also a very literary street in Paris. And I just will say this, I have more and more in common with old dogs all the time, which is why I've adopted it. And I said, the title here is Old Dog Eyesight. As I age, I see things more and more as old dogs do. drawn to the calm of no delivery men, of water fresh and cool, of indulging in forbidden foods, and savoring the fragrances of people I cannot forget, who loved me once, yes, and a few who paused briefly to caress. Thank you. This poem is called Hand Knitting. I don't know if any of you do that or enjoy it. My mother did, and she wrote she knitted to really help her with her depression, and it seemed to do that. So I wrote this poem for her. The sadder my mother became, what she called blue phases, the more sweaters we received. As she worked through her depression to a knit one, purl one, rock beat, they began to pile up. Though she is now decades gone, and they were knit to fit a teen, I've kept one to remind myself how accomplished she became, which has nothing to do with sweaters and yarn, but to help me recall how lives can be saved with simple things, 2 small hands, sticks, and string. I also write poems for my wife. And Valentine's Day is coming up, so I brought this. I'm just telling anybody that doesn't remember that Valentine's Day is coming, which I think I realized yesterday, but this is called She Did Not Always Love Me. She did not love me at first, yet somewhere along the way, on the penumbra of her marginalia, the lacework of her tangentia, she found me finally. I was performing like a drum major, with 2 pencils spinning in one hand, amusing her by using them like chopsticks to pluck words from the air, then printed them, which she hugged me, and like 2 brown bears on the edge of Kalmouth River, or sockeye salmon, we were wild caught. This is another of my Florida poems. And I wrote this one for myself. It's called Breakfast Alone Near the Shore. At 75, I am near the age when it's just now possible to stop thinking about myself and see things only for what they are. A cloth napkin folded into an obelisk on the table. A fellow diner offers me a nod and a smile. The morning sun dashes off a charcoal sketch of me in silhouette and posts it on the wall near where I sit. Outside, a water spout of shorebirds glow in different grades of matte or glossy, iridescent white, on their way into blue skies, corkscrewing up in a helix string. Hot tea is steaming next to my hand, a thick beige cup, a dram of honey placed by its side. And by this, I am blessed at 75. Thank you again. I have one more here. Oh, yeah. This is an example of me writing poems about reading poems. I was shocked today, and well, actually, I'm always skipping the title here. The title of this is Taking Inventory Following a Poetry Reading. I was shocked today that so many things had fallen out of line. Of photos of myself balding badly, scarce hairs circling my scalp, like flights of vultures rising from the neck and forming up around the rim of a snow-capped, peaked peak. And this epiphany was followed fast on hearing a recording of me reading aloud in a broadcast voice that belonged inside a bingo hall, framing for me a few new answers to seek. One, how far away from myself do I live each day? Two, how long have I been in denial this way? Three, which of 1,000 words are real facts of life, or just curled white feathers blown at the moon? And rather than start, I did bring some poems with me in my books, but I think it's time to hear from somebody else, and I appreciate your attention so much. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me without a mic? Can you hear me? Here's the mic. I hate mics. Okay. Thanks for coming, everybody. It's wonderful that you're here. I see old friends, new friends. It's just fantastic. Thank you, and thanks to Georgia. I thought today I would read a couple of poems from my book, Salami, and then the rest of the poems will be new ones. And I would appreciate feedback about the new ones. Not too terrible, but that would be helpful. The first poem is the one that gave my second book. It's titled Salami. Have I told you about salamis? They were important in our family a while back. My grandmother sent every visitor home with a salami for the enervating trip back to the suburbs or the next block. My grandfather had them smuggled into the sanitarium and hid them under his pajamas. Much of what my uncle wrote from the war in Europe was redacted by censors, but his repeated pleas made it through. Where's the salami? He wrote, you promised to send me salamis. Now only my sister honors this tradition by snacking on a piece of Hebrew National, sometimes with a slice of cheddar. I sense your scorn, your censure, but isn't prosciutto with brie a close cousin, separated only by several tax brackets? I thought salamis were only of the world of Jewish immigrants, and not to what they ate, when they ate at all, in the old country, until our French friends served little salamis with such a fancy name that just saying it felt like a flirtation. So what is it with salamis, you might ask? Perhaps the salami is our family totem, imbued with traits we cherish. Setting aside the obvious phallic part, we might note a certain robustness, a chewy, ruminative turn of mind, a pungent pugnacity, a spit in the eye of all cholesterol counters. Come to think of it, a salami might make a good weapon. Like Mike, I wrote about hair. This is called Learning to Like White Hair. A lover of color, I knew a sea change had occurred when, politics aside, I found a recent photo of Clint Eastwood appealing. I began to think that we fade as we age, moving toward transparency, to more easily blend with the earth as we are accepted into it. For some time, I felt my white hair as an alien occupation, but now I'm at peace with it, embrace it even, as it's brought new perks to my life. I always get a seat on the subway, trading my pride for the proffered kindness, not so hard to do given my bad back. On meeting me, people immediately talk about their mothers, fondly for the most part, or less welcome, their grandmothers. I'm also stopped by strangers and told how marvelous I look, though I've come to understand this is just half a sentence, the other half being, considering you have one foot in the grave. And posting my photo on Instagram produced greetings from unknown men, some white-capped too, but others seemingly young enough to be my son, making me wonder if necrophilia is underreported. I find these online offers at this age hilarious, and I want to tell my friends about them, and I will, once I find my phone. I think some of you can relate to that. So in the past couple of months, I've began to experiment with rhyme a little bit and was not too successful, but this poem came out of it that I like, called A Cycle. A tree is burnt, which is a loss, but in the hands of those with art makes something new. Now isn't that a wondrous start? What may emerge when hand connects a face, an arm, some people and the work they do, a house with all its urban charm, an inner world revealed to view. When one picks up a charcoal stick, there is no end to what might be, of skill and love, a vision born, a chance to glimpse eternity. And I don't see, I'm gonna skip this one. So also at this time of life, I think many of you might be doing the same, just sort of thinking back and reflecting on our lives and people in them and things that happen and trying to better understand. And in doing that, I've written, I guess, what I would call character sketches. And although I do have certain people in mind when I write, I think the traits that I describe are universal, and I think you might recognize the type of people that you'll find. So this is called Her Garden, and it's about a number of people I know, mostly in my family. Grudges are her garden, planted years ago in grievance, nurtured frequently with outrage. A sturdy wall keeps intruders from disturbing the careful order, perceives snubs in the corner, disputes the lush midsection, confrontations of leafy border, all in screaming yellows and reds. From time to time while tending the garden, she has a stray thought, an unwelcome, uncomfortable thought about her own role in the many dramas that brought her there. Such thoughts are quickly banished so that she can return to the safety of self-righteous certainty, though a part of her remains uneasy for a while. It turns out the hardest 3 words to say are not, I love you, but I am sorry. So a few years back, I was with a grandchild reading the classic book, Eloise, which I'm sure you all know. And instead of loving it, as I thought I would, I found it terribly, terribly sad. And I started to wonder what would happen if Eloise grew up. So this is called Epilogue for a Classic, the classic read, Eloise. Changes were made after a plaza guest reported Eloise's mother to social services for neglect. Her mother traveled less, but was just as distant, resenting her loss of freedom. More tutors were engaged to keep Eloise from riding the elevators, running down the corridors, and strict orders were issued against putting water down the mail chute. Distraught at the mounting household tensions, Nanny returned to her family in Britain. After some time, Eloise was dispatched to a prestigious boarding school where she excelled at French, but was twice suspended for inciting her classmates to mayhem and mischief. After college, junior year in France, Eloise held a number of jobs, mostly in hotel management, but nothing lasted. Feeling an inner emptiness, she considered joining an ultra-religious sect, hoping its copious rules of behavior would help organize her. Eloise found her current therapist on the Upper West Side through friends. This is a different tone, it's called Waiting. In the middle of the night, the hotel lobby is an oasis of light. The dark beyond its door is hiding the unfamiliar landscape, the feral dogs. It is very cold and utterly silent while we wait for the stranger who will drive us to the airport to begin our journey home. I am anxious because I do not know what to do if the driver does not come, or, once he does, how to determine that he knows where to go, since we do not speak the same language. I recall being told how a few years back, my mother sat in the lobby of her apartment building long before dawn, waiting for her aide. The doorman escorted her back to her unit, as she no longer knew which one was hers. She too was a traveler, but in the shifting terrain of her mind. She too could not give voice to her fears, but must have felt the need for safe deliverance when she sat in the lobby at 3 a.m., awaiting the caregiver due to arrive, as always, at noon. Unlike me, she was forever stranded in a world with no fixed landmarks. I feel shame for my temporary unease and huddle down, wrapping my coat around my grief, my regret that I was not there to comfort her in the dark of that long night. Is there any water? I have it, Barb. I'm almost finished. I'm almost finished. Thank you. Thanks, Carol.
This is
Sorry.
Georgia Court. She owns the bookstore. It's my friend Andrea.
Great. Sorry for that. This is called A Visit with My Sister. They were the last two left on stage, amidst the props and costumes from the prior play and ones before that. A silk dressing gown, a scarred samovar, a moldy cheesesteak, and pictures, lots of pictures. Once, the stage was crowded with all sorts of characters, some claiming center stage, some sheltering in the wings, others with only walk-on parts, but all of their joyous shrieks, their rants, howls of outrage or pain contributing to the cacophony of competing voices. The two left, whose roles had once been well-defined, well-rehearsed, now find those roles blurred. And having no one to tell them what to say or how to say it, they spoke unscripted, from memory and from the heart. Though once the theater was so full of tumult that being seen or heard was a challenge, it was now near silent, except for the ghosts in the audience, who kept up a running commentary. And from my last one today, I'll read something, and I hope it doesn't offend anybody. It's called a proposal. Reading the obituaries, I see that only loving mothers die. Perhaps only loving mothers are written up, which is unfair, really. Inadequate mothers should surely have their due. If inclusive, one might write notices like these. Jane D., indifferent mother to her 5 children, is fondly remembered by her Mahjong group. Or Lucille X., who preferred a good sale over family outings, is deeply mourned by the staff at Saks. And Gertrude P., who turned all her children's issues into dramas starring herself, is finally at peace. Let's not be sexist. Remembering a tyrannical patriarch, one can compose Leon C., who made his entire family quake in their Clarks, enjoying his power to the fullest, is now at rest. Must everyone become a saint when they pass? It seems we, the living, have a need to canonize After all, the dead inhabit us. They live on in us. But perhaps it is right to do as we do. Send everyone off as their best selves and hold on to hope. Thanks very much.
It's Dawn. Yep, this is Dawn. It's Dawn, my name. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Bookstore1. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, friends.
Can you hold the mic up?
I hope my poems this afternoon evoke, provoke, prick, tickle, and hug, and prepare you emotionally for 6:30. The first two are poems of place. The first poem is one of caprice, finding whimsy. You'll quickly see it's about Sarasota. At the Von Wezel, when the maestro raises the baton, his socks flash neon red. In the pre-dawn on Lincoln Drive, where Georgia lives, a neighbor washes a black Chevrolet Suburban, wearing his bathrobe and pajamas. The faux tree at Alta Vista hosts an empty Johnny Walker bottle on every one of its faux limbs, and one empty bottle of aspirin. And on Orange Avenue, a soapy machine wafts bubbles into the air every day across the road. Republicans smile. Dems smile. Even the uncommitted mouths of gnarly independents crinkle. It's not that we reach a chord, God forbid, but that we find a moment of shared humanity where each remembers from the crib that same first tickle on the tummy. What does it say that we have to search for whimsy these days? Next is the poem of Quiet Awe from Chappaquiddick. Salt marsh, the crash and suck of waves, the sweep of dunes are elsewhere. Here is the quiet library of the shore. A spindle-legged egret stares as with spectacles through the surface of a salt pool. From its balcony, an osprey lifts and floats above the tufts, scans for a ripple. Amongst the cordgrass, hermit crabs scuttle for morsels, like graduate students in the stacks. The platform built for viewing invites us. Something important is here. But like dyslexic children in the foyer of a great Athenaeum, we are stopped at the threshold and can only gaze in wonder. While we're being pensive, does the raindrop remember? Does the raindrop remember the ocean? Does mist recall its sparkle on the grass? Hailstones, the singe of lightning? Does a teardrop bear the DNA of the weeper? How is it that we recognize love, fear, excitement in pictures without teaching, without language? We laugh, weep, startle alike, and we only need to learn the names we call them. No one taught me the thrill of the lift to dad's shoulders, the grief for the run-over rabbit, rage at the man beating a dog, the exhilaration of my first bike. Where do memories live in the great library of the body? The head, the viscera, fingertips? And when the body is spent, do memories evaporate like dew? Do they fall again like raindrops in the garden? Some background is helpful for this next poem. In 1968, I worked in the Pentagon. My job was to harness the latest technology to support the Secretary of Defense. Currently, I am working on a collection of poems that juxtaposes the tech change, social rage, and desperation of two intervals, 1968 and now. The intervals talk to each other in the stanzas of the poems. In this poem, you'll hear that AI is not new. It is old. It's reassuring that we got through it in 1968, but there are still some scary issues to resolve. The name of this poem is called Eliza. In the spring of 1968, movie theaters feature 2001, A Space Odyssey. In it, Mission Commander David Bowman and computer HAL 9000 struggle to control each other and mankind. I calculate that 2001 is 33 years from now, and I will be just 59 years old. I hurry out of the theater and don't sleep well. At a Pentagon lunch that same spring, an MIT professor converses with software named Eliza, trained to respond as a therapist. Eliza, is something bothering you? Professor, people are so angry. Eliza, why do you say that? Professor, because I am angry too? Eliza, do you believe it is normal to be angry too? Not the voice of Hal, but eerily like someone you could talk to. In December of 2023, ChatGPT surpassed 1.6 billion users. In a dim apartment, a user types into his laptop, construct an audio clip of the president asking listeners to save their vote. It's been 55 years since Kubrick's movie. I still don't sleep well. In 1956, Allen Ginsberg published Howl, his epic rage against dehumanizing society. This is not that poem, but it could be. To Harvard, weep, you brick classrooms, wet the curved sidewalks of your campus and the straight stacks of your libraries with your tears. May your white steeples and your crimson domes sob, not because your teachers are to this or that, or because your leader gave misguided answers. No. Grieve because you have forgotten your mission to educate citizens and citizen leaders. You have lost the requirement for simple respect, the joy of sharp but blameless debate, the confidence of open questions, the humanity of apology and forgiveness. Yes, weep, you hallowed halls. Weep and find your way. Even if you didn't go to Harvard, there's something to say to that. Picking up on Liz, the title of this poem is Gardener, but it could be tennis player, could be reader, could be poet, I suppose. It's a paean to carving out from the whole world a place of personal pride and safety. This one has a dedication. It's for LDR. Gardener for LDR. Carved from the rest of all earth, staked and planted, tended and defended. This chosen piece of turf is your garden, and you are its God. Its sod is mindless of your school, your house, your bank account. It is unimpressed by your name. But the garden knows the touch of your hands, your fingers in its soil. Rhubarb, asparagus, chives raised year after year like your own children. Tomatoes, arugula, beans, fostered with the same love, while knowing they will leave at the end of the year. In this garden, you are the inanimate God, in this garden, you are the intimate God of elbows and knees, of fingers that probe and plant, of hands that stain with soil, the rot of compost, the nourishment of manure. The God of backaches from bending, chipped nails from digging, and scratches from weeding. You have carved this turf from the rest of all earth, made it your garden. Now it blossoms and feeds you and keeps you safe from all that is not this garden, and keeps you safe from all that is not this garden. This poem isn't like the other free verse poems. This poem has a tongue-in-cheek formality that goes with the heart and mouth subject matter. Super Bowl. Cheez-Its, nachos, dip delight are waiting for us Sunday night. Ever since the leaves turned red and pumpkins flourished in their beds, we've heard it coming, stamping feet and beery cheers for athletes whose size and strength seem way too much to bang and bump and grasp and clutch. The truth be told, their big boy game is a risky path to wealth and fame. We wince and cringe when they get bent and hobble to the sideline tent. But we still watch with fascination. We zealous fans of Football Nation. We even study halftime ads to keep up with the latest fads. We could be at a symphony or reading intellectually, but no, we choose on Sunday night the Cheez-Its, nachos, dip delight. If some of you are looking for a last-minute present to bring to your Super Bowl party, I've left some copies here on the table. I'd like to finish with a poem of old love. In the end, we have each other. It's called Walking Home from Figaro's Bistro. Close as an old robe, musky night enfolds the two of us. A truck hurries past, chasing its own headlights. Our fingers twine. For us, tonight has no haste, as dusk, languorous, content, and fragrant with jasmine, strolls towards dark. Yes, in the end, we, you and I, we have each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear a round of applause for really 3 terrific poets today. And before we get to, we want to have you all weigh in and ask questions or make comments about the poems. But I want to remember to let you know, since you all apparently are poetry lovers, that there are a couple of interesting events coming up here that you might be interested in. This Wednesday night, Valentine's night, I think we still have a couple of seats left. We're doing Neruda Love Poetry, being read in both Spanish and English by a couple of Florida Studio Theater actors. And we're having the wonderful concert guitarist Adele Munoz playing classical guitar and Spanish guitar. That's at 8 o'clock in the evening, and there is a fee for that. And I think there are maybe 2, or last time I looked, maybe 4 seats still available for that. So if you're interested, go on our site and see if the seats are still there. The other thing is that on March 3rd, and this is probably just going to go newly onto our website, so you're the first to know. March 3rd would have been the 98th birthday of the poet James Merrill, if he had lived. And we are going to celebrate his birthday here with a reading at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's a Sunday, March 3rd. And reading with us and talking about James Merrill will be Rick Hillis, who is somewhat of a scholar of James Merrill, but he will be reading together with an actor by the name of Peter Hooton. And Peter Hooton, if you don't know him, was the partner of James Merrill and was with him until his death. So the two of them will be discussing him, and that's March 3rd at 2 o'clock. But right now, does anyone have anything they'd like to say about or to, or questions to ask of any of our poets? Any comments? Yes?
Well, they were all wonderful and it's incredible, the senses of humor they all have. But I wonder, I haven't bought that many poetry books, but why don't they come with what used to be, CDs? Or maybe now, I don't know anything. Don, you can tell me the technology of it, like a QR code, and you can hear it read. It's so different, hearing versus reading.
That's very interesting, the QR code. I don't know, Don, you're the techie guy. Do you know if that's in the works? Certainly CDs are kind of a thing of they're gone. But do you know if there's any movement to do that, Don?
Yeah.
I dabbled with it at one point. I ended up with a bad idea. I was videoing my face at the same time.
I take that as a personal insult, Don.
I think it's a great idea, though. I think, yeah. Yes, Liz.
Susan, hi. You can find some poets on YouTube reading. I know Billy Collins is on there.
Oh, I know, he's fabulous.
Yeah.
I have a CD of his. You know what a CD is.
Sure, yeah. I think all of us in the room know what a CD is. Unfortunately, right.
But there's nothing like hearing the author.
I agree.
And then I have to figure out what they've written. I mean, put it in a book or something.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. It's a great.
Dawn and Liz, would you mind making house calls? Once in a while?
I bet they could be
Down
hired.
the street, won't have to go far.
Right. Another question over here. Oh, thank you. That was the other one I wanted to mention. The poet and memoirist Rose Styron will be with us tomorrow at 5 o'clock in this space. And she has just written and has published a little under a year ago a fabulous memoir. I just finished reading it, and it's really terrific. She's 95 and just a spark plug. And she has had a life like you wouldn't believe, from spying in places like Chile to being close friends with the Kennedys to you name it. She knew everybody and tells stories about them in the most really lovely and endearing way. And she's going to be here 5 o'clock tomorrow. So sign up for that if you are interested. Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. Anyone else? Yes, over there? Yeah, any of you poets want to share your process? How do you write? Liz, how do you have those wonderful funny poems. How do you come at them?
Probably the least disciplined of any of us here. I usually ruminate on the ruminate.
Yeah, Liz, why don't you come on up here, because they can't hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm a big ruminator and procrastinator, and so for years I'll go over something in my head, I'll write down a few lines maybe, and then maybe something will come to me, the first line of a poem will come, and then I'll sit down and do it, but it could take years to do that. So I know Don is quite disciplined, I'm not. Maybe he would like to comment too. But sometimes, and this has been happening to me a couple times in my old age, something will just come to me. I was doing the laundry, one of my favorite tasks the other day, and the first stanza of a poem came to me. And at those moments, I think somebody's channeling me, which is wonderful. I'd love to meet them.
Thank you. Anybody else want to weigh in on that, Don?
I can grab it,
Or
screenshot it, send it to you.
yeah, both of you?
Okay. This way.
Okay. Coming up to the microphone makes sense. That way you can be heard. No, it's not easy.
Thank you. That's really a good question. And it clearly is not the same answer for everybody, because everybody has different processes. In my case, and I think there is some research to this effect, there's a kind of a burst of creativity when you're older. So in your 70s, 80s, a lot of things you understand better than you did when you were 25 or 35 and half nuts. So I think now I start with a title. And when I write down the title, I know what the poem is. And then I go ahead and write the poem. And I write in the first person all of the time. Should never say all the time, but pretty much, because that puts me in it and lets my own emotions get added to it. And it feels more real after the fact. So I have probably a line of 30 poems that I need to finish, that I'm excited about, all of them. So just kind of in life, when you have less time towards the end, you have all of this work that you can do and creativity. So I feel very lucky for that. But if that answers the question.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Yes, Don.
I was thinking, Mike, that the poems I write now are quite different than the ones that I wrote in my 30s and 40s. The poems now don't have any sex in them. How you get poems is they come from all over. The Super Bowl is an obvious deadline. You know, it's going to be at 6:30 tonight. You got to have a poem for it. You better get ready. But the characteristic of my poems that I think is most characteristic of me is the number of revisions I do. In the last poem I read, the Walking Home from Figaro's Bistro, there are 40 words in that poem. I did 22 revisions of that poem. over and over and over, squeezing out a word, putting it back, thinking, workshopping it, having people tell me that stanza really is grossly out of place, and working to replace it with something better that works. So, while the inspiration can come from being here with you this afternoon or going to the football party this afternoon, the work that goes into them is what distinguishes them from me. What about you, Georgia? You write poems.
I do write poetry, but I'm not as disciplined as anybody. I write a poem every day, every morning, and some of them are okay and they're worth working on, and I work on them, and others are just not. But I think it's a great exercise anyway to write a poem every day. Get your brain moving, I think. So I highly recommend that, actually, along with your breakfast cereal, which is what I do. We have time for one or two more questions. Anyone else?
Oh,
Yes.
I just have a quick question about your children's book, What If? Could you tell us a little about it?
Sure.
And what grade level or
Yeah.
age level?
The what ifs, I have a couple more coming out next year, but the what ifs is a bedtime story, so it's for kids, I'd say up to maybe 4 to 6, really. And it's about a little girl who can't go to sleep because she's worried about what she's going to miss. There's a whole category, FOMA, fear of missing out, in children's books. And this is about Thea and her problems. Mainly, she's making her parents crazy. And I know this because this is my granddaughter. And she drove everybody crazy. And this is what she has to do to get to bed. By the way, I wrote the book thinking that it would help Thea and her parents. It didn't. But from time to time, I get a feedback that it did help somebody. I'm very happy about it.
Well, thank you. Thank you all. One more hand for our poets, and then you may all go home and make your dip so you're ready for the game. Bye-bye. Thanks for coming.